my older kids, and trying to get a place where I'm comfortable communicating with them.
Kody Brown is on camera, tearing up like a man who's been robbed. And millions of people are supposed to believe it's grief. But here's the explosive truth. Those tears don't land like heartbreak. They land like leverage. Because while he's agonizing over 10 days without seeing Aurora, other kids have spent years being iced out, dismissed, scolded, and treated like they're optional. And that's the part that should stop you cold. The emotion is loud, public, and dramatic, but the empathy is selective. So in this video, I'm not doing the usual "Kody's misunderstood" routine. I'm breaking down the pattern, how the crying shows up exactly when control is slipping, how Robin's rules become a velvet rope, and why Mary's quiet gray rock exit is the first time the script stops working. And yes, there's a heavier shadow over all of this now, which makes what we saw back then even harder to ignore. Not to sensationalize it, but to name the dysfunction people recognized in real time. So the question is simple. Are we watching a father in pain, or a man using pain to win? Let's get into it. Kody Brown's latest performance as the eternally wronged patriarch arrived with his usual flair for self-pity. But the emotional debris he leaves scattered across his children's lives is far harder to ignore. A recent clip of Gwendolyn describing her father's dramatic lament over not seeing Aurora for 10 days. 10 days. Was a stark reminder of the invisible toll this spectacle must have taken on the rest of the family. While he wept for a brief inconvenience with one child, others were silently absorbing years of rejection, volatility, and the unmistakable message that their pain was negotiable, while Robin's was gospel. The tragedy involving Garrison casts an unbearable shadow over these scenes. Any discussion of him, understandably, feels fraught. Yet, silence does no favors to those who recognized, long before the headlines, how relentlessly he and his siblings were diminished. The young man was serving his country, building a life, adopting senior cats, grounding himself in responsibility and adulthood, qualities that should have earned admiration. Instead, he was treated as an obstacle to his father's latest reinvention, publicly scolded for daring to ask Robin perfectly reasonable questions, and threatened with physical violence for the crime of not accepting the new family hierarchy. The estrangement that followed was hardly surprising. The heartbreak that followed that estrangement still is. It is neither cruel nor speculative to acknowledge that when a parent uses national television as a megaphone for humiliation, it can compound despair in already vulnerable minds. Conversations about suicide, attempts, and mental health crises remain essential, not taboo. They remind people, veterans included, that they're not alone, that seeking help carries no shame, and that a society willing to lobby endlessly for physical health campaigns can extend the same urgency to mental health. The landscape is improving. More resources, less stigma. But awareness and openness remain crucial. Watching Kody navigate parenthood is triggering for many because the pattern is so familiar. A man enthralled by a new partner, a new household, and a newfound willingness to treat his existing children as inconvenient relics of a previous life. The cruelty is not cinematic. It is generational. His behavior toward his older children consistently reveals a man who protects his ego with more dedication than he has ever protected them. Even Mykelti, who once positioned herself close to Kody and Robin, seems curiously detached from Robin's children. The distance raises questions, particularly since her age is not far from Aurora's. Meanwhile, Aurora and Brianna navigate their roles with the quiet calculation of children who have already survived one family upheaval and learned the cost of displeasing the adults who hold their stability. Their devotion has the unmistakable shine of survival, not affection. None of this alleviates the grief of what has already happened, nor the discomfort of acknowledging how much of it played out in plain view. But refusing to name the dysfunction only protects the people who caused it, never those who suffered under it. And for anyone struggling, help exists. 988, with an immediate option for veterans. Silence never saved anyone. Honesty still might. Nothing spirals faster than a manipulator with no one left to manipulate. And this story proves it. Mary's refusal to be drafted into Robin's latest theatrical farewell is less a triumphant moment of independence and more a belated revelation of just how thoroughly she'd been trained to perform loyalty on command. For years, her primary qualification for marital consideration seemed to be a tireless willingness to echo Robin's every emotion, defend her missteps, and sacrifice personal dignity in exchange for the faint possibility of Kody's approval.
The arrangement functioned beautifully for everyone except Mary. Robin supplied the need for a devoted lieutenant, and Kody enjoyed the spectacle of one wife desperately validating another, all in hopes of inching closer to his good graces. Now that Mary has released the fantasy of a future with Kody, the entire machine has stalled. She no longer feels compelled to fuel Robin's endless appetite for wounded grandeur, and the absence is striking. The moment Mary stops contorting herself into Robin's emotional bodyguard, the dynamic reveals itself for what it always was: a hierarchy designed to keep one woman groveling and another preening. And without Mary propping up the charade, Robin is left scrambling for an audience upon which to drape her grievances. This new era, post-polygamy, post-illusion, promises to be fascinating not because of personal renewal, but because Kody and Robin have been stripped of their favorite sport, triangulation. Their relationship thrived on having an ever-rotating cast of lesser wives to manage, correct, and feel superior to. Deprived of that ecosystem, the pair now face the unsettling prospect of having only each other to dominate, console, and outperform. It is unlikely to be a graceful transition. Mary's quiet admission that she does not trust Robin simply completes the triangle. All three original wives have, in their own ways, confirmed what years of strained smiles and polite testimonials tried to obscure. Robin, famed lecturer on the sacred necessity of trust among sister wives, was never offering it and could not sustain it. The early proclamations about unity now play like ironic foreshadowing. There is genuine sadness in observing how manipulable Mary has been. Some individuals, driven by hope rather than evidence, cling to narratives that validate their longing. She repeatedly ignored warnings from family, from friends, even from her own child, when deception and manipulation unfolded in plain sight. Desire can be a powerful solvent for red flags. With distance, perhaps she will finally grasp that Robin's allegiance never resided with her, only with the maintenance of a system in which Mary's desperation served a purpose. Meanwhile, the looming spectacle of Kody and Robin isolated together raises its own unsettling questions. Without a household full of women and children to manage, correct, and emotionally exhaust, what remains? Their partnership has long relied on external targets. Deprived of them, the performance may lose its script. At some point, even the most avid hobbyist runs out of trees to cut down in the Arizona wilderness. The question then becomes, what happens when the chaos they once orchestrated is no longer available to distract them from each other? Here's the moment that proves the family rules weren't about safety. They were about control. Robin Brown has perfected the art of insisting she is merely following Kody's rules, while simultaneously ensuring those rules function as a velvet rope, one she alone controls. During the infamous COVID era, she delivered this performance with particular flourish. Whenever Kody tentatively suggested the radical notion that Mary might be allowed human contact, Robin promptly shut it down. all while sermonizing about respecting Kody's rules, with the vigor of someone reciting scripture she personally authored. The pattern is unmistakable. Publicly, Robyn postures as the benevolent peacemaker who longs for family unity. Privately, she tightens the circle around herself, ensuring Mary remains conveniently on the outside. Christine eventually said aloud what had long been obvious. Robyn spent years manipulating and isolating Mary. Mary, tragically loyal, invested her emotional energy in the one sister wife least likely to return it. And when Mary finally asked why she was barred from the one home she consistently quarantined for, Robyn wrapped the denial in a faux plea for fairness, a virtue she only ever seems to apply when it benefits her. COVID merely stripped away the varnish. No reasonable person would have begrudged the family's lone household of one a little human connection. Even Christine and Janelle, who were hardly following the rules to the letter, were stunned to discover Mary had not been welcomed at Robyn's, despite Robyn's supposed closeness with her and Mary's near monastic adherence to their protocols. If Mary couldn't get in the door after executing the strictest quarantine of anyone, the message was clear. The rules belonged to Robyn, not Kody, and compliance was irrelevant unless it served her preferences. Small wonder Mary's demeanor eventually shifted. When Robyn turned up, journal in hand, to derail the moving process with one of her signature emotional overtures, Mary's frosty politeness spoke volumes. It suggested a woman who has begun to see, perhaps with the helpful clarity of someone like Jen in her life, just how thoroughly she had been placated, misled, and managed. Jen appears to be the rare companion willing to offer Mary genuine support, laced with necessary truths, an antidote to years of selective friendship. The irony is rich. Instead of investing family resources into a sprawling McMansion, Robyn could have offered proximity, support, or even shared space to the woman she claimed to cherish. But affection was never the asset she was chasing. Access to Kody and the family's financial bandwidth proved far more compelling. Mary likely wouldn't have wanted to live with Robyn anyway, but she wasn't asking for that. She wanted precisely one thing: to be allowed inside the house of the woman who called herself her closest friend, and even that was denied. By the time Kody began implying that currying favor with Robyn was a prerequisite for any relationship with him, the truth had already been laid bare. Robyn's anxieties, some perhaps sincere, have repeatedly doubled as convenient justification for excluding, controlling, and extracting. And Mary, while dutifully honoring every so-called rule placed before her, remained shut out. The family didn't simply fracture during COVID. It revealed who had been tightening the fault lines all along. Here's what no one wants to admit about Robyn's heartbreaking goodbye to Mary. The only thing breaking was the performance. Robyn's farewell performance arrived with all the subtlety of a foghorn. Yet the intended emotional spectacle never quite materialized, mostly because Mary, in a rare and deeply satisfying display of boundary setting, refused to provide the required audience participation. Mary's demeanor was a masterclass in the gray rock technique. Neutral tone, flat affect, and absolutely no emotional nourishment for someone who thrives on dramatics. The unopened gift, so theatrically thrust upon her that Robyn ultimately had to open it herself, only highlighted the shift. When Mary responded to the theatrics with a dry, "It's pretty," the entire production deflated. Robyn had come prepared to extract a breakdown. Instead, she encountered a woman who had finally realized that not every crisis needs to be absorbed, managed, or indulged. The irony, of course, was thick enough to spread on toast. After years of minimal contact, limited invitations, and little genuine effort toward the relationship, Robin materialized at the 11th hour to frame this separation as a grand tragedy. Suddenly, the tears flowed, the voice trembled, and the cameras rolled. Yet nothing exposes hollow sentiment faster than a recipient who refuses to play her assigned role. Mary's simple reminders: there are phones. This day is about her. These emotions are Robin's to sort out. Cut cleanly through the theatrics. One could practically see the moment Robin realized the script had been rewritten without her. It certainly didn't help that she arrived not to help pack, support, or contribute anything tangible, but to commandeer the emotional spotlight and hand over a journal that radiated the aesthetic energy of a yard sale apology. The mood shift was immediate. A lively, upbeat scene abruptly stilled the moment she approached, as though everyone instinctively braced for the obligatory performance. And perform she did. Right up until she slunk back to her car, denied the consolation, validation, and hand-wringing that historically accompanied her distress. The repeated insistence on overwhelming sorrow rang particularly hollow, given her silence during the departures of Christine and Janelle. Emotional devastation, it seems, is reserved only for situations where she stands to lose control. And, as many have observed, income. The relationship she cultivated with Mary always hinged on manipulation disguised as concern. When that dynamic no longer served her, absence became the norm. But with cameras present and a paycheck attached, suddenly the grief was operatic. Meanwhile, Mary's composure bordered on triumphant. The woman packing boxes looked freer and more grounded than she has in years, even occasionally appearing amused by the spectacle unraveling before her. The hug that lingered too long, the quivering chin, the attempt to redirect the day toward Robin's emotional needs. None of it worked. For once, Mary did not apologize, did not shrink, did not smooth anything over.
She simply held the line and moved on with her life. And that is what made the entire scene so revealing. When stripped of an audience willing to orbit her, Robin's theatrics collapsed under their own weight. The manipulation was exposed, the self-centeredness unmistakable. A true friend would have arrived early, offered help, shared a quiet goodbye days before, off camera. Instead, she arrived as a wet blanket with a prop journal and left without even bothering to say goodbye to her own husband. If there was any lingering doubt about the dynamic, this episode illuminated it completely. Mary is finally seeing the behavior clearly, and the reaction, or lack thereof, proved just how done she is. And watching Robin walk away deflated, deprived of the sympathy she came to harvest, almost felt like poetic justice. Here's the part of the Brown family dynamic no one wants to admit. The so-called obedient wife is the one steering the entire ship. Robin's grip on the relationship doesn't require careful observation. It announces itself with all the subtlety of a foghorn. The house hunting episode makes the hierarchy painfully clear. A single, tentative suggestion from Kody that the family might consider a move outside the current school zone sent the girls into tears and panic, followed immediately by Robin's public scolding. The reprimand didn't end there. The subsequent interview continued the performance. No one erupts with that level of indignation over a hypothetical unless accustomed to absolute control. The irony, of course, is Kody's insistence on branding Robin the obedient wife, a claim that withstands scrutiny about as well as wet tissue. The actual dynamic is on full display when she literally places a hand over his mouth and he simply accepts it. Imagine the reaction if any of the original three wives attempted the same gesture. Volcanic doesn't begin to cover it. Her authority is so firmly entrenched, she's even managed the impressive feat of convincing Kody that he wields it. Intellectual brilliance isn't her calling card,
but manipulation certainly is. Granted, the bar is low. Kody isn't exactly a fortress of discernment, but persuading him that her ideas are his own stands as her magnum opus. She plays him expertly, while he mistakes the melody for his own composition. A rewatch of the Flagstaff move exposes the choreography. Kody muses aloud about whether relocating was the right call, hand-wringing over unsold houses in Las Vegas. The scene only reinforces how little of the decision originated with him. The plan carries Robin's fingerprints, right down to her practiced surprise when he frames it as his independent choice. Financial consequences were an afterthought. Her priorities lay firmly elsewhere, culinary mediocrity included. Meanwhile, his other children endured school changes without negotiation when the family uprooted to Flagstaff. But a mere suggestion that Robin's children might face the same inconvenience is treated as an affront of historic proportions. The double standard doesn't hint at who holds the power. It declares it. Here's what they never admit about Kody Brown. The tears aren't for Mary. They're for the ego he can't stand to lose. Kody Brown continues to demonstrate that emotional inconsistency is his most enduring skill, wielding it like a parlor trick he assumes no one has ever seen before. His latest performance, an operatic display of tears, regret, and belated appreciation, lands with the sincerity of a used car warranty. The spectacle arrives just as Mary finally begins to find her footing outside his shadow. Naturally, this renewed confidence alarms him. Nothing unsettles a self-appointed patriarch quite like a woman who no longer requires permission to breathe. The pattern is familiar. Push, pull, repeat. Years of emotional whiplash dressed up as devotion. Now that Mary is healthier, happier, and, most threatening of all, independent, he resurfaces to announce that he likes her again. What impeccable timing! She is thriving because she is no longer orbiting his volatile moods. Yet he behaves as though her progress is somehow an invitation to reclaim authority. Even his teary confessionals seem crafted for an audience he assumes is gullible enough to swallow the narrative that he is the wounded party, beset by ungrateful women. The melodramatic breakdown, complete with shoulder-burying sobs, plays less like heartbreak and more like a toddler's parting tantrum. Loud, performative, and immediately forgotten once the attention shifts away. The absurdity stings precisely because he abandoned Mary long ago, yet now performs devastation over a loss he architected himself. Mary's lingering hope, evident in her remarks about trust, shared property, and finances, suggests that the emotional entanglement he cultivated over decades remains difficult to unravel. She has spent years turning crumbs of affection into entire narratives of loyalty, constructing a marriage out of scraps he never bothered to replenish. His sudden grief is not for her. It is for the status she once gave him. The image of a man with multiple devoted wives revolving neatly around him like satellites. Losing that illusion wounds him far more than losing Mary ever could. The tragedy is that she knows it didn't have to be this way, and he knows it too. He simply refuses to pretend anymore, not out of integrity, but out of boredom with the performance. And so, he offers her the dubious honor of being the favorite ex-wife of a man unwilling to invest an ounce of genuine effort, a trophy no one asked for, and certainly no one should want. The sooner this charade is acknowledged as emotional manipulation rather than romance, the sooner the story can move towards something resembling honesty. Here's what no one wants to admit about Robin's sudden confidence. It's not growth. It's the victory lap of someone who thinks she's already cashed out. Robin no longer bothers with the performance. The latest episode made that abundantly clear as she responded to Mary's attempts at humor with the warmth of a glacier.
These were the same sorts of comments she once giggled at during the Utah move. Yet now, even the courtesy smile has vanished. Instead, she and Kody exchanged a series of synchronized eye rolls and disdainful glances, leaving Mary visibly uneasy. The dynamic could not have been more glaring. Kody and Robyn versus Mary. A well-worn formation that has only become bolder now that Mary is finally exiting. The lone advocate has outlived her usefulness, so the convivial act has been retired. This shift extends to the talking heads, where Robyn has traded trembling vulnerability for a smirking, combative confidence. The subtext reads, "Don't make me a victim, sweetie," delivered with the satisfaction of someone who believes she has secured the spoils. And in her mind, why wouldn't she? Everyone else is gone. She sits in a multi-million-dollar home the others will never touch, enjoys access to retirement funds now recast as discretionary income, maintains the only intact household, and has not had to hold a job in decades. The only remaining performance obligation is convincing an increasingly skeptical audience that she, too, is somehow wounded. Even that duty seems optional now. The show is winding down, and she has already declared victory. What's emerging is not a new Robyn, but an unmasked one. The earlier incarnation, tearful, fragile, supposedly overwhelmed by the dissolution of the family, has given way to someone noticeably sharper, more calculating, and far more invested in narrative control than previously acknowledged. There is little indication she ever cared for anyone outside her own household, and every indication she understood precisely how far a well-timed cry or denial could carry her. Whether she intended the family's collapse from the beginning is debatable. That she recognized the leverage in each emotional display is not. Of course, the triumphant arc comes with its own ending. The prize for winning is Kody around the clock until the eventual divorce, at which point the financial pot, large though it is, shrinks. Beyond that, the landscape is barren. Widespread public disdain, limited prospects for future employment or television opportunities, no discernible skill set, and a reputation built on manipulation rather than charm. The peak has already passed. From here, her options are to remain with Kody in mutual misery or leave and hope another opportunist appears before the money evaporates. Should that day come, one can only hope her children are financially self-sufficient and still willing to answer her calls. The recent shift in demeanor makes perfect sense in that context. The check has cleared, the mask can be dropped, and the feigned tenderness can be retired. Gone are the theatrics. In their place is the drier, colder alliance between two people whose smirks suggest they believe they pulled off a tidy financial coup. Meanwhile, Mary still wavers on recognizing the illusion for what it was. Whether she ever will remains uncertain. Complicating the victory lap is the not-so-minor matter of money already spent. Any appraisal that lands higher than the optimistic numbers Kody and Robyn casually float could leave them in debt, particularly if they've been leveraging Coyote Pass as collateral in every financial maneuver. Their behavior bears all the hallmarks of individuals desperately trying to obscure the truth. One hopes Janelle and Mary collect every dollar owed to them, preferably before the facade collapses entirely.